All right, hey everybody, it's Luther Wilson III. Today's Monday, September 9th, 2024. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you tuning in. So as a lot of you may know, I'm a real estate professional here in the Kansas City market. My real estate brokerage is Upside Property Services, and almost all my clients are real estate investors. And I've been focused the last decade or so on helping investors with their projects, acquisitions, funding, and getting to cash flow some type of way. And one of my specialties is seller financing, doing creative finance transactions. And that's kind of how I've made my mark here in the Kansas City area as a real estate professional. And I want to continue to share more about that. So in today's video, I want to talk about how to structure seller finance transactions, okay? In some of my previous videos, I talked about our main way that we invest, me and my clients, mostly B-class, some C-class single family homes. And instead of simply renting the houses out or selling them outright, we offer some type of financing to residents, to families for these single family homes. And that's been amazing. That's how me and my partners have been able to take our cash flow, our portfolios to the next level. And I feel like that's where we've been able to make the biggest impact. But it seems like there's more property owners and real estate investors who are interested in acquiring properties with the use of seller financing. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. I was telling my dad earlier, I had a buddy of mine who also does real estate investing here in Kansas City. He reached out to me a couple days ago and we spoke for about an hour, kind of catching up. He was working on a few different things, but in particular, he had reached out about a deal that he has in the pipeline. It's a single family home, Kansas City, Missouri. He's been in communication with the seller. He offered a cash deal, okay, which, he knows is probably going to be too low. But what was interesting is the seller piped up and told my buddy that he'd be willing to do seller financing, some type of seller finance transaction for him. And I was like, all right, that's really neat. And it kind of got me thinking, okay, when I've done my seller finance transactions in the past, when I acquired properties, either with the use of the existing financing or the seller was willing to do, some type of wrap or seller carryback, one thing that I noticed is that I had trust. There was a rapport. There was, a bit of a relationship that I had with that seller. They believed in me and they more or less wanted or was willing to give me a shot. And so that may be a plug for a lot of you investors and deal finders and real estate pros out there, the importance of relationship building and so forth. So my buddy, we talked about a number of different things, but he said, hey, the main reason I reached out to you is because, you're known for creative financing, the seller financing. And with this seller, who was willing to do that with me, I wasn't sure how to structure it. So I reached out to you to find out. And so I got to thinking, I said, look, man, if you go back to the seller, and my buddy asked me to put something together. And I said, look, man, I got a YouTube channel. I'm super active on LinkedIn and Facebook. I sent them the link to the YouTube channel. And it got me thinking, like, I probably ought to put something together. And so here I am now. So I told my buddy, I said, look, man, go back to the seller and you're gonna, the two main things that you're gonna have to talk to him about is how much money up front and how much money each month, okay? Is there gonna be any money that you put down up front? And then how much a month are you gonna offer to pay the guy, all right? And then from there, you gotta figure out, okay, you definitely want the deed. If you're buying creatively, you're an investor, you want the deed in your LLC or your entity name. So, I told my buddy that, hey, you want title to transfer, right? Then you got to figure out, besides the down payment and the monthly payment, for how long, okay? Is it going to be fully amortized to where each month part of your payment goes towards principal and interest? And then of course in there, you're going to have, some type of escrow. You're going to have to take care of the taxes and the insurance, okay? Since deed is going to transfer and you have title of the property, you're going to get the tax bill. You're going to have to get insurance in your company name or your entity name, however that looks. And so make sure all that's factored into your monthly payment, okay? And then are you wanting to keep this property long-term? Because I wouldn't necessarily even bring up a loan. I would wait for the seller to potentially bring that up, because they may not bring it up. So how much down, how much a month, and for how long, okay? You want the deed for sure, okay? And in this situation, my friend told me that the owner of the property has no debt on the property. There's no mortgage. He owns it free and clear. So I'm like, okay, that makes it a lot smoother. It makes it a lot cleaner. In that case, it could be a true seller finance transaction, and the seller can have their note that gets created, right? Their interest secured by the property, and it's going to be in first lien position, right? The house is in Missouri, so in this case, it would be a promissory note and a deed of trust. You got the warranty deed that goes into your name or your LLC name or your entity name, okay? And then the bills are going to you or each month, all right? So that could be very clean, all right? So besides the down payment, the monthly payment, the deed transferring, okay, the seller being in first lien position, all right, you gotta, that's pretty clean. So then from there, you gotta determine the price, all right? So real quick, we went over what we thought the property may be worth, okay? It may be worth $140,000 after repair value, okay? However, the house is gonna need work. My buddy had already been to the property. He took pictures, he sent me the pictures. It's livable. In fact, there's somebody living there now, okay? So, but there are some things that need to be addressed. We were thinking maybe $30,000, $40,000 worth of repairs, all right? So that, you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at structuring this seller finance transaction and negotiating it as well. And then all of that, depending on the price and the terms that you can negotiate and solidify and purchase the property on, can then help determine how you can exit, all right? Because if there's no balloon, right, and you have access to capital, you could put up the down payment. There's, the repairs, there's gonna be holding costs, overages, incidentals, and so forth. If you as an investor are negotiating and can make that happen, whether you have the money yourself or you bring in a capital investor, if you are able to leave that money in the deal, meaning that you could put it in and you don't necessarily have to refinance out because you were able to negotiate a deal with no balloon, or you just want to, that's a key part, right? Is if you have a balloon, if the seller negotiates or wants you to negotiate some type of balloon, you're going to be limited somewhat on what you can do, okay? And then as far as bringing in the funds, that there's going to be a cost of that money, and there's going to be terms associated with that. And so if you can avoid the balloon and you bring in a capital investor, which is the model that I've been talking about a lot more lately, then you can acquire that property on a note, true seller carryback, right? And then you can structure the terms so that it'll cash flow each month, all right? So in that case, the situation that I referred to earlier with my buddy, I said, look, man, offer him, $2,000 down and $600 a month, because we thought that, hey, this house could rent for somewhere between $1,000 to $1,200 a month. All right, so if you offer him $2,000 down and $600 a month, you still got to figure out the repairs and so forth. But if you can't make that work yourself or bring in a capital investor to make that work, you may be able to serve that deal up to another investor who can make it work. All right, so that's just one example. It's one way that could be pretty clean on a seller finance transaction. All right, if there's a situation where you come across an opportunity and you, the investor or the purchaser, you're looking at acquiring the property and the seller has underlying debt on it, you may consider offering to purchase that property subject to the existing financing and taking over those payments. Those types of transactions are pretty advanced, and you are going to need to do quite a bit more digging, okay, into not only the condition, but what's happening with the existing mortgage. All right, so if for whatever reason you are able to negotiate that, I'm recommending that you talk to an advisor. You can reach out to me. I've done a number of existing financing transactions. I can get you plugged in with my mentors and some other real estate pros who have done that type of thing. But those can be tricky and somewhat intricate, as attractive as they are. Just be mindful. You got to dig in. Okay, not only are you looking at bringing money to the table potentially, you may be looking at repairs or at least some type of deferred maintenance. You for sure want to do some type of title search to see what's happening with the underlying debt, okay? And then you also want to get a copy of the seller's or property owner's most recent mortgage statement. And then even beyond that, you're going to have to dig even further to figure out when was the mortgage originated, because there are times where the property owner may have gotten behind on the mortgage and they worked out an arrangement, a loan modification of sorts with the mortgage company, and that may not be reflected on the most recent mortgage statement. So there's a lot of, and that's just a handful of things that you would need to dig into when it comes to an existing financing type of transaction. And then in today's market, those types of deals are still going to require some type of capital. So that means all of those things that I mentioned. And then, okay, if you're going to bring something to the table for the seller's equity, if they do have equity on top of the repairs and so on and so forth, and they may want to do an additional amount over and above the existing financing. So you may end up setting up a note or negotiating a second lien position note on top of the existing payment that you're going to be taking over to get the seller satisfied. So you got all those different things, making the monthly payment, and then whatever your plan is from there, if you want to rehab and resell, if you want to, immediately turn around and then do a contract for deed, okay, that's a huge move right there that we've done a number of times. There's different ways to swing it, but again, depending on the opportunity, what can be negotiated with the seller and agreed upon, and then getting your funds sorted out. If you have to bring in additional capital to take down the deal, all of that combined together can help determine what would be a great way to then exit or get to cash flow from there. All right, so talked about true seller carryback, all right, with, the first example. The second type, I went over existing financing, also known as subject to. And then I want to talk about lease options a little bit, because I think that is going to be something that not only I begin to use more in the future, but I know some other investors here in town that are using that are going to have to use that as well. And so if you're looking at offering a lease option, because I personally wouldn't necessarily recommend doing a lease option as an investor, maybe as an owner occupant, but I'm looking at, in my case and a lot of people that I know in their case, we're going to be offering to do lease option for residents that we put into this home, or potentially, if you want an investor to purchase this home from you. So on the lease option, all right, I believe that they can be done well in it. I think if it's done properly, can avoid some of the risk that you might take on by doing multiple seller finance transactions in a year. I mentioned the 3Ds. Look at one of my past videos. I did a video on the 3 scary Ds of seller financing. So you can avoid some of those, or at least minimize some of those by offering seller financing. Okay, so I'm looking at, okay, if I'm an investor and I want to offer seller financing to residents, I'm going to structure that so that there's an option fee up front, okay? I'm going to collect a security deposit, all right? And then I'm going to collect the first month's rent. So there's 3 different things there as far as upfront money goes. Then I'm going to have, of course, the lease agreement, and then I'm going to have the purchase option agreement, which are 2 different agreements. Okay, so I've been learning about lease options more lately than I have before, and check out John Burley. In fact, he's coming in town this week to speak at the Mari event. Check him out. So I like his model, how not only does he raise capital and do B-class single family homes like I do, but they do lots of lease options. So what he would propose is giving the residents 10 years to exercise their option, all right? So you got upfront money, option money, you got security deposit, you got first month's rent, you got 2 different agreements, okay? And in the lease agreement, okay, you can stipulate that the residents are responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance up to a certain point. If it's something major, of course, you may have to handle that or sort that out somehow. Same thing with seller financing. Why these are so attractive to me and to oodles of investors is because you get more cash flow. You can, essentially buy back some of your time, free yourself up from having to deal with tenants and the landlord issues that never end, okay? So not only can you get more time freedom, but the returns on your investment can be higher too, all right? So that's seller financing lease options, freeing yourself up. Those responsibilities, the maintenance and upkeep on the residents, okay? So with that lease option, giving them 10 years, and on that option agreement, you're going to have a certain amount locked in already, stating, hey, this is what you will pay when you get your own financing, whether it's in year 3 or year 5 or maybe year 11. If something happens and you get them more time or whatever, you have that amount locked in on the option agreement, and then you can determine, okay, are you going to flex on that? Is there flexibility because the house is probably going to need to go through an appraisal and maybe some type of informal or formal inspection, all right? And then you can also, on the lease option, determine, as far as that monthly payment goes, is there a certain amount each month that goes towards either, the purchase price, okay? And can they make additional payments over and above the rent amount to go towards the purchase price? This is your game. You are the business owner. You can decide how you and your team, your partners want to operate. you can make those decisions and determine how, based on your property, right, location, condition, feedback, what the market will bear based on all those things, and determine, okay, what you think is going to work and what you believe is fair and, will work long term so that it is affordable for your purchasers, whether it's an investor or owner occupant. Again, we're pushing for owner occupant residents for various reasons. All right. So plug in with me. I'm going to continue to do more videos talking about investment operations, acquisitions, seller finance transactions in the future, giving some more real world examples of how my customers and clients are making it happen. All right. So I went over some seller finance strategies, ways that you can structure them and negotiate them. And in the future, I'll also talk about how you can handle them, all right, and how you can grow your investment portfolio. Okay, so it's Luther Wilson III. Again, send me a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook if you want more goods, more gems, more game when it comes to real estate investing, financing, investor financing, seller financing. All right, signing off. Appreciate you tuning in. Peace, y'all.